So once we talked about the quality identifiers from the box, some other things to notice is there's different tags on here. As you can see, where it came from, who it's delivered to, the Art Institute of Indiana, what it is, and then what's 1 of 2 mean? There was 2 cases. So we're going to get this out of the way for right now, and then we're going to actually go into the fabrication of this chicken. We did rinse the chicken prior to breaking this down. We have an ice pan set up, perforated pan with ice on top of it, and then to separate that ice to the chicken for indirect icing, we have plastic wrap. We did dry this. We did dry this chicken a little bit just because it's easier to use chicken that's not soaking wet. So I'm going to ask you guys some different questions as far as breaking this chicken down. So what's the first step that I taught you, Carlos?
Make 2 incisions in the front and get the wishbone out.
So we're going to make 2 incisions right where the wishbone is, and it's right at the where the neck is and the chicken breast itself. So we're going to make an incision on the right and an incision on the left, and then we're going to use our fingers back to which bone is here in the middle?
Heel bone.
Heel bone. We're going to pull that out. What does that do for us, John?
When you're breaking, it allows you to get more meat off of the chicken breast.
Exactly. There's about anywhere from a ½ ounce to 1 ounce of meat underneath that bone, plus you can get a straight cut. So we can also use that bone for our stock that we're going to make. What's the next step, Bo?
Going to make a cut where the wing is from the breast, and then
Where the wing is from the breast. So we're going to, I always start in the same pattern I always left off with. And we go to the wing, we turn this wing up like you were turning your elbow up. I make an incision here at the chicken breast, and then I French down. What do I French down to? The joint or the cartilage, and then I pop the opposite direction. That Frenches that bone, and that gives me an airline breast. So I'm going to flip this over because I'm right-handed and I don't want it to feel awkward. Once again, I'm going to French down until I hit that resistance. From here, I'm going to hold. I'm going to pop the opposite direction. It didn't go that well for me that time. There was an extra little piece of the cartilage there that I needed to get through. So we're going to pop this, and we'll be able to pop it off. No worries. So we got those separated out. What's my next step, Brett? We're going to start on the breast, so we want to keep this skin on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to angle my knife somewhat inward toward that heel bone because chicken breast is concave, it's not straight, so we need to get as much of that meat off that heel bone as possible. So we're going to cut through and go straight down. That knife will fall on the left or the right side of that heel bone. This one fell on the right. From here, I'm using just the tip of my knife, and I'm following through the cavity, just the tip. And then when I get into here, there's a bone that connects the wing to the rest of the carcass. Once you see that bone, you can literally cut straight down, and then that will separate that breast off. Come back up through, and you have a chicken breast. The next side, we're going to come in at that angle towards that keel again. And then when we get to the top of the keel, there's what I call a little backward C. And that's where that meat, really that 1½ ounce to 1½ ounces of meat is at. So I'm going to follow just the tip of the knife again up that keel. You can see how nice and clean the carcass is itself. And if you have some of the keel attached to the breast, you can separate it off. Once again, follow down that bone to the joint. Come back up, get as much of that nice skin on there as possible. And we have a nice clean chicken breast. We're going to clean this up some. We can save that part of that keel for our chicken stock. Keeping everything in order, right? We want to make sure our wings are separated out, our breasts are separated out. All right, next step, what am I doing, Rachel? I'm going to flip it this way, so the tail's toward me. I'm going to pop the bone, and that's going to really separate to help me really break down the rest of this chicken. What I'm doing here is I'm just kind of pulling some of that meat down and that skin off, because this actually will help you guys identify where you need to cut next. I turn this up, and then at the tail, I start here, right? So what's the next step I need to do? Where am I cutting to get that oyster off? Where's my oyster at?
2 inches above.
It's about 2 inches to 2 1/4 inches above the tail. So you know that your oysters are right here. You can see them, they look like little hearts almost. So I'm going to turn this back up. I have this separated off, and I'm coming at that tail where I separated that down. I'm just following this until I hit what? What's right here, John? You're closest to me. What's that right there?
Looks like the spine.
What was this bone connected to? What did we take off the wings? What did we come down to?
Oh, the joint.
So the cartilage.
Yeah.
So once again, this is where most people fail with getting the oyster off. You need to go slow, cut through, make sure you get, see how you hear that sound I just made? That was me cutting through that cartilage. So then I pull and I get that oyster off. So while I'm getting this, I want to keep my cutting board clean. And then I'm going to the next one, turning this one up, following at that tail till I hit that cartilage. Fat will cloud your stock. You can choose to put it in there for flavor, but I choose sometimes to take it out because I don't want to have to remove that much of the fat. Fat is flavor, but at the same time I want to get as much of the fat off of there. There's still residual fat on this carcass. I'm going to break this in half, and that's going to go for our stock. Next step here, we're going to do what?
Separate the thigh from the leg.
Separate the thigh from the leg, but first we're going to take off this joint. I'm going to trim this down. Remember, we put the knuckles down until we see what? What's right here? What do I always say to you? The separation of what? White and
Red.
white and red. So then you just put your knife between the two, pop that joint, and then we save that cartilage. And then we're going to separate off the leg, take off some of the fat from the thigh. Once again, come around, we're cutting through the tendons, we're putting the joint down, popping here, we're separating. Does anybody have any questions on this part of the chicken? No?
Is
No
there a
questions?
reason that you break the carcass in half?
No, there's no reason I break the carcass in half. It just makes it smaller. So if I am pan-searing it or roasting it, it's not, if I'm braising with it, which we're actually braising this week, it's not as big into the pan. It will separate out, get most of the flavor out. You can break it down further. So speaking of braising this week, braising has a couple different methods that you can do. You can choose to trust the meat. You can choose to not trust the meat and sear. So what I've pulled up for you guys is what we're going to actually be working on: slow poaching and braising. So we have dry heat method, and we have a combination methods, and we have slow poaching and braising. So some ideas with slow poaching would be something like a duck confit or chicken confit, where you're searing, you're braising for a long stretch of time. Typically it's a piece of meat that does not have a quick cook time. It's something like a roast, or like duck confit, you want it to be pull off the bone, or if you're making pulled pork, you guys probably have made pulled pork at some time in your life. Those require a slow poaching or shallow poaching over an extended period of time. So like some people do it over 24 hours, some people smoke for 12 of those, and then they will braise or they will shallow poach for, let's say, another 12 hours till that gets really tender. It should be fork tender. Does anybody have any questions on the shallow or braising at this point? We're going to cover this through demos, which we always do. We'll get our mise en place, which means what, Rachel? Stuff ready? Everything in its place, right? Everything in its place. And then we will go into, once again, have these plate diagrams that I really enjoyed watching you guys use those a couple weeks ago. And I think that helps you plate, and then we'll work on professional style plating as well today. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.